all the technology that we get involved, they are really are disruptive technology. If it's not a disruptive technology, to raise fund is difficult, you know.
Welcome to the Asia Rising Tech Talks podcast, where we bring together the best technical leaders across Asia to discuss their industry passions and challenges they face. I'm data science Donnie from Airswift, connecting businesses with top tech talent. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Henry. I'm very excited to hear more about your insights into the startup world in Asia. If you don't mind, could you give me a bit of an intro on yourself and Multipeak?
Yeah, sure. So Multipeak, it's innovation lab, you know, and a startup accelerator. So we see quite a lot of traction, you know, in a lot of industry because we are not focused on one industry. We really explore every industry, and this I think what makes us unique. So in the accelerator platform, you know, we have a very interesting business model because we are really getting to early stage startups around the world. You know, uh, we we take equities. You know, we are also helping them on doing the POC, the proof of concept. You know, we're helping them to connect with VCs, PEs. You know, and we are very involved in the operation as well. So we support them, and we take over all the strategic partnership parts. You know, for that platform. Additionally, we have an innovation lab. You know, our innovation lab has quite a large number of technology. You know, it's about 300, and we plan to double it by next year. All those technologies, you know, are from a lot of different industry, biotech, agri-tech, military. You know, but we don't do military. So what we try to do is to source military technology that could help SMEs to become more productive. This is quite unique. You know, not many people are doing this. So we have a huge network. The way that platform operates is that we go to large companies. You know, we collect problem statements. So we assess the company physically. We go, we interview the staff. You know, we interview the management, every department, finance. And the only thing we collect are really focused on problem statements. Per property is about 200 problem statements most of the time, you know. And then we take back those problem statements in our lab. We source technology around the world, you know. We bring it to Singapore, we prototype in Singapore, you know, and then we re-commercialize it to the industry that needs it. But always from the startup incubator to the startup accelerator, from to the innovation lab, we only looking at sustainability, ESG, and circular economy. You know, I think these are the things, you know, that is our specialty. We are very knowledgeable on that, and like I say, you know, instead of having a procurement that waiting for people to knock their door with product, we really source the product all over the world.
How did you refine this process? You know, it sounded like it was very detailed, very methodical, and this company has been around for, I believe, 6 or 7 years now. How did you, I guess, create that perfect equation of how you were able to assess from the idea all the way up until the proof of concept?
Well, you see, I think you're in every company, you need to go with the flow. You know, when we started, you know, we were purely business consultancy, and then COVID came, you know, and then I realized because my background was in real estate and hospitality and so on, and I think, you know, we saw that things gonna change during COVID. People will behave differently. You had to think differently. You had to think out of the box because we still had, you know, invoice and bills to pay. You know, so we decided with multiple shareholders is to focus on technology. We know that this you can't go wrong. You know, now going to technology and making sure there is an adoption rate. You know, which we're gonna discuss later probably, but the adoption is crucial. You know, and not you know just coming up in technology for the sake of technology without solving problem. So we saw that during COVID, who was in big trouble, like us, in fact, in that time, was really, you know, startups, because nobody wanted to invest, you know, everybody wanted to see how COVID is gonna last, you know. We we went to see a lot of startup and say, listen, guys, we're in the same boat. Give me a bit of upfront equities. I do a bit of free work for you, and then let's take it from there. And this we created a trust. I would say we started to learn how to know each other. And in the environment of startup, I would say like 90% will fail. So it's really about knowing people. Do they have the shoulder to drive it? Do they have the appetite? Different parts of the world, people behave differently. Some are more aggressive than others. Some are very aggressive in poor country, rich country. They take it a little bit lightly, and so on. So we analyze all of this, and then we started to mix expertise, into the startups, focusing on, we could not raise fund at that time. So we were more looking at strategic partnership, getting LOI of companies, that they were interested to invest in the product when we will be ready. We had time to rethink, the way we will go and approach people to invest in it and so on.
I think solutioning is key when it comes to dealing with uncertain times and certain circumstances. And it seems like that is probably something that you're an expert at, just for how you've articulated, the business. Now, in regards to, I guess, your platform, we are both based in Singapore. APAC, as you alluded to, different countries have different needs and different behaviors. How do you see Asia and the startup, culture here, especially in Singapore? It's growing day by day.
Singapore is complicated. You have to. I mean, the made in Singapore, I would say, works overseas. You go to any country, you say we are a Singapore company. It's credible. People are really passionate about what Singapore has done. The way Singapore drive the business and so on. Is interesting way. It works. I think for Singapore startup, mistake is to look Singapore market. I think Singapore startup needs to look for the region. Like Southeast Asia or even Europe, US. I realize startup that are Singapore startup that are going overseas are very successful. If you focus only on your local market, I think investors doesn't believe that is scalable. And then they want to see hungry people, already going out there. I think, government give you a lot of subsidies here, to have enough to perform, I would say, and is already sometimes too much, I would say. What you need as a startup in Singapore is to be hungry, the motivation, determination, pragmatism, and also I would say to have endurance. Like running a startup is not a sprint. It is a marathon. We have to be prepared. You have to have a lot of patience, and not be discouraged. Uh, at first, and I think things should work.
Absolutely. Now, I know we specifically spoke about Singapore, but I feel like some of the more exciting, environments to be in are just overall APAC. There's all kinds of amazing, exciting businesses across Southeast Asia. Now, from your purview, because obviously you get to liaise with many different kinds of organizations and locations, could you share a bit about, APAC as a whole and maybe some of the hot destinations that we could, have on our purview as well?
I think that you have to have mixity in everything you do. I think strategically, to look at the region partnership, and all of this, especially with Malaysia, which is just next door. They are very good as well. Indonesia. You want to do manufacturing things in Singapore, doesn't make sense. Now you do your R&D here, makes sense. You work with Malaysia or Indonesia to OEM your products. They have the expertise, they have the distribution channel, and then on our part, we open a lot of doors, in the US, in Europe, Africa, and unless you can go gradually, so yeah, but I think APAC, it's a bit difficult also with the tensions you will see now between US, China, Russia, so you have to navigate through those rough seas. But it's manageable. I think at the end of the day, um, you have to be pragmatic on this.
Absolutely. And, from your perspective, I think when you initially are coming up with an idea, pull the trigger to actually, start investing in your idea. There's a lot of things that potentially could go wrong. And from my perspective, I think partnering with an organization like yourself, a startup incubator or startup hub or innovation lab, it has many benefits. But I would love to maybe hear your thoughts on some of the, the key bits that really, the value that an organization like yourself adds.
You see, I think this is a good point that you touch. If you look at some startups, like, I'll give you an example. I had a startup came to me. They are building a machine for biowaste. But to me, biowaste is not a problem. I mean, you take the rubbish, from a restaurant, which is food, okay, they're a bit high content in salt, whatever, but it should throw it anywhere, 2 years down the road, it disappeared. It's not a problem to me, I mean, uh, you have to treat it and so on, but the problem is plastics, circuit board, how do you call this? Um, Semiconductors, all these type of things, batteries, all this is a problem, and coming up with just a technology for the sake of having a technology, again, you have to focus, does it solve a problem? And what is behind, who's gonna adopt the adoption, of it? Is really people's gonna use it and try and appreciate it. And second is how you gonna uh, make sure that you can sell at a high scale, that you will have volume. Because if you don't make volume, again, and how do people make a fast ROI, on it? So all these type of things, this is a mistake of a lot of startups, is they develop the wrong product, or maybe it's cool to have, but it's the wrong timing. So I think I always tell, youngsters, when they say, "Oh, I have no idea what to do, but I want to do something on my own, I want to try," then they come to us and I can tell them, what I think. I can share my problem statements. We have about 7,000 problem statements on our database. So we can pick a few, and tell you, okay, this is a problem for this industry, but it's also scalable to other industries, and this is the way, I would say, to start brainstorming rather than doing something cool.
As well as, the visibility aspect. Someone might think they have, the next billion-dollar idea, but when they actually, get into the nuances, they, really start testing the market, they might be shocked at the results that they come. But, something that you said that I really liked is that doesn't mean that it couldn't still work. That might just have to have a shift of focus, shift it, what potentially could be changed to ultimately, lead to that goal that they're looking for.
This is why you see you need to have a lot of people on board to give you a lot of feedback, guidance. This is why actually the accelerator is to tell you what you don't like to hear. But also, we also motivate you when it's time to tell you, listen, it's not because, people don't understand what you're trying to sell them, then it's not good. But again, if you're convinced on your product, that there is a market and you solve problem, you should not go wrong. After is determination, resilience, and this is what they teach you when you do military, like you do your NS, is resilient, right? And same when you sign up to a marathon or triathlon, it's in your head, you have to drive it, believe in it, and yeah, it's important.
I was going to say same thing in recruitment. I think whatever you're going to do, it'll help to be resilient, have thick skin, and have some adaptability. I don't think you could go wrong. Uh, Now, something that is a good segue to, something I'm really interested to hear. You've been fortunate enough to, if I'm not mistaken, have two IPOs. What were
I'm
some of the
doing.
best practices, advice? Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir. What are some of the advice or, some best practices or tips that you can share with, budding startup founders?
No, it's the same. Honestly, it is really about, believing it, make sure it solves the problems, because all the technology that we get involved, they are really are disruptive technology. And if it's not a disruptive technology, to raise fund is difficult. It's a very, but if you can show that it's very disruptive, it's very interesting, because we approach people that we're going to disrupt to invest in it. So those people, if I give you an example, we plan to remove all hotel towers, from the hotels, because it takes a lot of water, electricity, chemicals, logistic, storage, And we are developing a product now that's going to fully hair dry you, and with a cool technology, a lot of scanning and so on. I cannot tell you too much, but it's very interesting because to raise funds to do that prototyping, then the idea is to talk to a laundry company that usually are a very industrial company that wash the towers from the hotel, and say, listen, we are going to take you some business, you know. We think that hotels in the next 2 years will not use hotel towers because we have a new product. Before we come on the market, do you want to be part of it? Do you want to invest in it? Do you want to help us to develop it? Because you have the distribution channel, the client database and so on. So this is what we usually try to do to simplify our strategic partnership, and, to develop our technologies, is we find people that we're going to affect to make them realize that this is coming, and we give them the opportunities to invest in.
Awesome. And I hope, from my perspective, I would hope that I would be one of the ones that you would go to in order to, get ahead of the curve. Or, technology is changing everything. As you mentioned, hotels, waste management, it stretches everywhere. But a hot topic in the market right now is really around sustainability, green technology, ESG. And you mentioned that is some areas of interest that you're really trying to focus on with Multipeak. If you could, maybe elaborate a little bit on that and some of the aspects that you're seeing.
Yeah, so I think, you see, even in your industry, first of all, before we go even to sustainability and sustainability and so on, I think your industry is going to be disrupted as well, because, I believe, I may be wrong, it's my personal opinion, but, I think the way that companies recruit has to change. You cannot recruit, based on keywords of resumes. I think, now soft skills, needs to be more developed, more psychology and on the day-to-day situation, the way you would react, not on psychometric tests or this type of things. So I think, there's a lot of space that we can improve the recruitment, and where AI, can really improve the society and make companies, who are more creative, compassionate, and has more empathy, for people. So I think this is coming. Now, when it comes to sustainability, ESG, sustainability part, I would say we work a lot on coral carbon credits. We are planning, to grow coral at a massive, large scale, robotize it, and be able to really replenish, the coral, the ocean of coral, because we need it. And, I think we have been doing absorbing problem statements from coral farming all around the world. The problem that come back all the time is they wait for NGOs to pump money. They have to cry for people donations, and whatever they're gonna do with that money is just a drop in the ocean. It doesn't change anything. So our way of seeing it is to say, why not do we turn it into a business? That company understand that if they spend a lot of money in at large scale, they can get carbon credit for kilometers and kilometers of coral, planted coral, that will change, that will have an impact, at least, on sustainability, and not, just giving 200,000 a year, and say, okay, we did our ESG part. This doesn't work. And I think companies knows that in the future, they will have no choice to purchase carbon credit if they want to carry on doing business. So we are on this. We actually just signed a partnership with a very large Web3 company in Japan that do tokenization for banks and so on. So we were working on new methodology with Sud, and try to certify it with Vera and Gold Standard. So we work on a lot of things on sustainability. There is a lot of angles we can take, not only coral, but forest, and so on. But ESG is also something very interesting to us, because it's a playground for innovations, playing with, there is two types of technology. The technology where you focus on productivity, cutting costs, And then you have the technology, which is more entertainment, guest interaction, all this, it's very interesting because it requires a lot of hardware, this is what we like, not so much software. But of course, that part, software part and robotics, all this, we're very involved in that.
Absolutely. And, it is very interesting. We hear hot topics like sustainability, ESG, but ultimately, what does that mean and what can you really do to, change the impact? Especially when you are a massive MNC, been around for hundreds of years, how can you really change best practices? And I think infusing with, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you see, and this I may do some enemies on this, but you see, when I go to companies and they tell me, they have an ESG department, I realize the background of those people is really finance. So, when it comes to finance, everybody can read figures, I mean, even ChatGPT can read your figures, and analyzing it, is one thing, and it's giving data, analyzing data, but nobody has an ESG department with somebody who has an innovation lab expertise, and I think what we do in Multipeak, to help actually to try to support that financial mindset is we go on the field, and I can guarantee you that I will find a technology based on your problems that will reduce your carbon footprint in the next 3 to 6 months. And this is credible. I have proof. We can do a POC, for example. We can ask your finance department to do some figures, scenarios and calculations, but you know, you can you have to be able to put a KPI every year. You need to be able to measure, what you have been cutting, from your electricity consumption. Do you put sensors everywhere? Do you have a rooftop things? How much water you spend to clean your building every year? So through all of this, we source technology that will focus on this and reduce your carbon footprint. But this is measurable, so doing reports is one thing, but really going out there around the world and bringing new technologies to solve your problem, we can add a lot of value, because we can really show results very fast.
Turn into actual insights, which is
Yeah.
the biggest aspect and probably the most important aspect of the entire, topic itself. Now, from my perspective, I've done a lot in with startups, and the last 18 months has been a little bit of a roller coaster ride. It was SVB, shutting its doors. I found that companies that, had funding, they really held it quite close, didn't really do too much with it. We're just trying to chug along and sustain. If you were looking for it, it was quite difficult to, get access to funds. Over the past, start of this year and moving into, H2, I think the sentiment is changing. I think the market is changing where, the ripple effect is kind of worn off, as I'll say. And now companies are starting to open up checkbooks and starting to invest in different kinds of organizations. Startups are starting to actually hire and start moving their product along and develop their teams. I'm curious, are you hearing and seeing the same things?
Yeah, I think you see, it's also, you need to have the right audience. I noticed a few startups, they go and talk to family office or VCs or PEs, that they have no interest in that area. So, there is a lot of family office. I mean, some will tell you we are sector agnostic, but then you waste your time because, they are not. In fact, they always have, something they have knowledge in and expertise in that they will prefer to go. And then you have some who are really focused, for example, on healthcare, or really sustainability or whatsoever. But I think it's really challenging for startup to identify the right investors, who they are, where they are, I think what they do, what they are interested on, what did they try before that works or didn't work. So all this, we had got a lot of value on that end because we know them, been working with them for many years, and I think it's easier for us. But it's sometimes the problem they face.
Absolutely. And also, again, that buy-in, it's quite difficult to speak to someone about a very off the wall topic and technology and problem that potentially they don't really truly understand. And
Right.
if they don't understand, then typically the easy answer is a no, instead of really assessing and finding, someone that, does understands that particular, I guess, problem, and could potentially relate. Um,
Big risk.
Now,
It's a big risk because you see, you putting money in, and somebody has to be liable for it. So when you don't understand, or it's getting complicated, or when you come to AI, and those youngsters are in their own world, and we are a little bit behind sometimes. You panic. Yeah, it's true. I mean, you have to have another expertise coming in, at least giving you a feedback, and giving you an opinion.
absolutely. And where do you see the market heading? There's been so many changes over the past few years as regarding, startups and the ecosystem, especially in Asia. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Where do you see the next 2 or 5 years heading?
No, I think it will carry on, but I think just people don't realize how fast AI is going to change the world. I think, people say, oh, we always need people to do this or that, but in fact, it's not true. And I think, the next 2 years gonna be a new world. I don't think anyone is prepared to what's coming. I think we start to master AI now, slowly, and it's because it's self-learning as well. I mean, it makes great improvement. Uh, I just think, you see, there is two ways. All the world's gonna be beautiful to live in, or it's gonna be a nightmare. And I think, why are we? I mean, if all our ancestor has been developing technology, I think it's always in the optic not to have a bad life, is to work less, and to be able to have a good life. So I strongly believe that in the future, I don't see the needs of working for people. I think people will maybe pay to stay home. I don't know, but I think, we have to embrace it, and we have to quickly react, to understand, how this AI and robotics can run the economy at some point on our behalf. We should not be, I had a 17 years old Australian guy who wanted to convince me to be part of his startup. And he says, I don't want to spend a week to look for a new job. He says, I should be going surfing, and the AI should be spotting the fantastic job for me, should sell me to that company, and should brief me before I go for an interview and tell me what to say, what not to say, and I should have a chance to show that what I can bring to the company based on maybe like an interview with AI out of 1,000 questions that have been analyzed, who measure, of course, my intellectual, but also my compassion and creativity and so on, and and can even suggest me to do other things, But to me, a PhD at the end of the day doesn't guarantee you a job. So and in fact, a poor country, you take any youngsters, that doesn't have the chance to have a PhD, for example, or they have access to ChatGPT, and the content you put in ChatGPT will change your life. And is how good you want people to be happy. You want to solve their problem and so on. I think you will have all the tools to be successful.
I think the biggest gap that I see in that scenario is just particular the educational aspect. Learning how to leverage off of AI in order to educate yourself. And on top of that, not everybody is able to learn in that particular way. I think the adoption and adaption of individuals is going to be very interesting to see how, like you mentioned, how we keep up with the changing of times and make good use of those particular technologies. Um, Now, AI is, the hottest topic. We can't walk 5 steps without hearing about it. But in your, words, the next 2 years, we're going to see revolutionary changes, using technology. Now, I would love to talk about the potential negative side of things. We can all, list all the positives, how it's going to change and all of the sunshine and rainbows. But what about, the potential negative aspects of us, adopting AI at such an accelerated rate that potentially we might not be, ready for?
I don't look at the bad side. Honestly, I know there is some. I don't want to be depressed in there, but what I know. The only downside that I see is that people think it's going to come later, but I think they are not prepared to have it tomorrow at their door. This I think is the negative side, because if you look at the human industry, in the humanity, whatever happened, that it's a war or whatsoever, we are pragmatic, we adapt, we find solution, so I'm not worried about this, I think it's just the speed of it, that is a bit scary. Um, and if when people do bad things, he will be spotted. It will be new law coming on the market to regulate this. So I'm not very worried about this. I think we should focus on the good side. I think there is it, it will solve a lot of problem at the end of the day. I don't see like my grandparents working in the mines or whatsoever in the farm. Working all their life. And then at 60 or 70 years old passing away, without to have enjoyed life. I think we make a big, you can see the last 60, 80 years, we work much less. We have probably more stress. And I think that stress can be taken away by AI. If you have a stress to do tons of pages of reports, now look at ChatGPT, it's doing it in 10 minutes for you, more or less. Of course, you need to read again, but it's not the same stress, of course. I think, it's a big revolution.
I think it'll be more good than bad, 100%. But from a recruitment perspective, you said a few interesting things that really resonated with me. One of the topics that we hear, nonstop, we're speaking to hiring managers and human resources professionals, is about diversity, D&I. And I
Yeah.
do feel that, AI and the next generation of technologies and tools will really be able to help not just have people say the right things, but actually hire the right way, make those decisions, try to take out some of the biases that we don't even
Mm.
sometimes realize that we have. And that aspect I'm very excited for, because things obviously need to change. Diversity and, having people from all kinds of backgrounds is really when, in my
Yeah.
opinion, things start to really, come together. Uh, now, for, the way
Mm.
you see things from your perspective, uh, for the future of, startup founders, what are some words of wisdom, that if you had, you speak to startup founders all the time, if someone has an idea right now, they're listening to this episode, what are some things that you would give them to kind of, encourage them or, start them off the right foot in regards to potentially, pulling the trigger?
I think you see, I always think, the source of the idea is wrong, especially if they are young, it depends also the situation, if they are mature people like with an experience, many years of banking or any industries, they want to do their startup and everything. There's nothing much, you want to advise those people, they probably know better than us. The thing is, if it's youngsters coming out from school, have big dreams, motivated, I think, they need to understand more all other industries, go out there, ask the right questions, visit factories, nothing stops you to do that. In fact, you know, I see a lot of youngsters in Starbucks on the weekend, try to brainstorm, but this is wrong, it's not the first step you do things. I think the first thing is to go select an industry or two or three, contact them, meet the CEO, tell them you are young, you just want to see how it works, you want to collect, information, interview people, I see no CEO will tell you no, you cannot come, we are happy to open doors. But then after, once I taking the experience, for example, of a young kids, you walk to a 5-star hotel, you say, okay, my parents have a wedding anniversary next week. I want to rent a suite, even if it's not true, you just go there and you say, no, they're coming. I want to visit a suite. So they will give you a staff that's going to bring you to a suite. And during that journey, to the suite and back and forth, is a perfect opportunities to ask smart questions. What's the hotel occupancy? What's your problems? What is the guest mix? Where they coming from? What do you like in your job? What you don't like? All this type of things, is things you have to extract, ask tons of questions about it, and then go to Starbucks, then brainstorm something. And in fact, Starbucks is not right for a student. I would say, they should more go for a local coffee. Have this, understand that you're starting from the bottom. Without your parents, without nothing. It's your own story you're writing. And starting at Starbucks to me is wrong. But you can, I think you go to a local coffee, no aircon, whatever, and dream big there, rather than in the luxury place to drink big. You have to also balance this, I would say. But for youngsters, yeah, especially when you live in the developed country, you are not hungry enough compared to a poor country, because they don't do business, they don't eat, and sometimes they don't have family or so on. So I think it's a very different approach, and we have to. I mean, I have an 8 years old son. I really let him to focus on, on doing his own money. Having right habits. Not always asking for things or having a luxury test. When they are young, is also it's education.
Oh, absolutely. Learn by fire. But it seems, the theme that I heard inside of there is really pushing yourself in out of your comfort zone. Uh, thinking outside of the box. If you think your problem is going to solve X, Y, and Z, why don't you actually go get boots on the ground and, walk, if it is the hotel industry, speak to the wait staff, the people that are cleaning the rooms, try and actually get the visibility to the people that would probably have the answers or have even bigger problems than you even anticipated.
Yeah, you see, it's very interesting what you say. If you look at um, the first thing, if you look at hospitality, for example, industry, to me, it's a business school, because whatever you learn in doing a PhD, more or less, an hotel will have all this in place. Managing stocks, logistic, HR, finance, sales and marketing strategy, data analysis. You have it all in one place. The difference with a school, for example, is you don't practice it every day until you master it. So this is already something, you should look into, that sometimes on the weekend go and work in the hotel. I mean, there's no bad things, but practice more those what you learn in school, hotel or other the factory or whatsoever, on the weekend, rather than doing nothing, or just being at Starbucks. Second thing I think is very interesting is travel. I mean, I left my home when I was 14 years old. I work on cruise ship. I travel around the world. These things you do when you are, 19, 18, 20, just go out there, see the world, mix with different nationality, different culture, and then when you come back here, I think you have a different perception. We say that uh, you know, forge you a character, a discipline, a vision, it helps a lot of things. By being in a routine, in the same territory all the time, you become narrow-minded. It's normal, it's like, if you have a CEO that has been 20, 30 years in the same company is not competitive. It's very rare. I mean, you need people who has been trying the US market, come back in Asia or vice versa. All this, I would say this traffic is healthy, to put a company, I would say, productive and interest and competitive. Like you see, the American dream. I mean, you're American, we all talk about the American dream. It's something I learned there is, yes, it's possible. You can go in the US, become rich very fast. But what I realized a lot when I used to live in the US is that all of them, they know that if you don't reinvent yourself every 5 years, you die. You're no longer competitive, you will lose market share, and it's very easy to drop down and back to where you started. So I think you see, uh, only by traveling in the country like US or other countries, but traveling, if you don't experience that, extract those information for people who has made it, will lose it, and so on, you don't learn. It's like believing, reading biography, of people. I- they have been suffering, they make mistakes. They are telling you in the biography not to do the same, or what they should have done different. It's up to you, you want to learn it or not, or you want to really make the mistake to really understand the other way.
Absolutely.
It's, yeah.
Well, as they say, you learn from others' mistakes so that we don't repeat them. And unfortunately, if you don't actually have your eyes open, if you don't have your ears to the ground, if you don't, challenge yourself, whether culturally or, push yourself out of your comfort zone, you're never going to feel that feeling. And, you know,
But it's always age.
yeah,
You see, you cannot say at 20 years old, my parents was always telling me, don't do this, you will see this will happen. And the first thing you do it. Whatever we tell you not to do, you're going to do it, right? And it's also part of the experience. You need to become a bit stubborn. If you have, to say no to people and don't agree with them doesn't mean you are a bad person. You need to have a character, And this is why, I push my son also to do a lot of individual sports because this, you're fighting against yourself, and I think it's very important, to challenge people, to tell them what they don't want to hear. And even when you are wrong, as long as it's said, politely and respectfully, the debate should be on, and I think it's important.
absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, the things that you have shared make me very excited on a few different facets, excited for the future and see how technology is going to affect us on a wide variety of different planes. The new innovations that are coming out that'll probably, come at a time or a place that I never expected. From coral reefs to what you shared about the hotel industry. It's very exciting. And, I really appreciate you sharing your views and sharing your opinions and things that you're seeing in the market because, this area, especially in APAC, is booming with startups with amazing ideas. And I hope that, a few of those founders are listening today to some of your advice, adding some resiliency and pushing the envelope so that, if something does happen, they adapt, adjust, and refire. And hopefully, some of their dreams will be heading to IPO.
Yeah, and I think also the last advice I want to give is, you never have enough of expertise in your company, so bring more people from outside, with different expertise, create a nice board of people, that are knowledgeable, committed, and you're not alone, I think, if you want to do a startup, you want to keep your full equities, and I think sometimes it's better, to give more to encourage people to come on board with you, and psychologically it helps, it gives you more credibility also at the front of investors, having a strong board on your company and directors and so on is very important.
Absolutely. Henry, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to many more conversations and learning lessons from you, my friend.
And thanks, Danny. It was always a pleasure.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Asia Rising Tech Talks. We'll hope you join us next time. If you're hiring or looking for a new opportunity, feel free to get in touch with us at Airswift. If you or anyone you know would like to be featured in a future podcast, drop us a message. I'm Data Science Donnie, and you can email me at donald.mccleary@airswift.com or visit us at airswift.com. Thank you again to all our guests, and thank you for listening.